Welcome to the Unstoppable Profit Podcast. Wherever you are today, if you're starting with nothing or are well on your way to the success you desire, with the right people, processes, and promotions in place, you will be unstoppable. And now, I'd like to introduce your host, Mike Stromsoe.
Greetings, everybody. This is Mike Stromsoe, and welcome to the next episode of the Unstoppable Profit Podcast. I'm coming to you live from the Living Agency Laboratory. I am pumped, and I am excited today to have in the house a good friend and entrepreneur extraordinaire, Alana Fulvio, founder of Pendulum. Alana, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I am amazing. I feel incredible. So excited to be here with you, to share, to learn, to just interact. So I'm ready to go. I'm excited.
You are incredible. And that's one of the many reasons why I am excited to have you on the podcast. It took us quite some time to get you here. You're currently finishing up the Profit Leadership Summit,
Yes.
which have been an amazing, incredible event. Thank you for all of your investment of time, of energy, of your vision and putting that together. And what an honor and privilege it was to participate, and it's changed so many lives. Thank you for doing that. Virtual high five to you. Whoops, let me get you the virtual high five there. There you go. So let me share with you, everybody, a little bit about Alana. She's a 13-time world record-holding athlete in skydiving with over 3,500 jumps. I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about that offline because I haven't accomplished my first yet, but I need to get that done, right? Silicon Valley founder and CEO, a writer, female solo traveler, humanitarian, super connector, sentiment being advocate, and global volunteer. In 2014, Alana quit her 13-year corporate Silicon Valley career as lead in-house recruiter and talent acquisition advisor for companies like LinkedIn, GoPro, and after taking them public to found her own company, Pendulum. She saw where companies were getting hiring wrong, and in our world, it's about the 3 Ps. People, processes, and promotion in that order. And 80% of the emergency calls we get in our coaching programs are about the first P. Right there behind me. Yep. My fingers straight on the back wall there. But the first P is a constant problem, but you've got it right. And that's another reason that I am excited and pumped to have you on the podcast today. And you created solutions to help people eliminate this costly blind spot. You're a people-first business thought leader who's cracked the code on how to get hiring, retention, culture, employee performance, and profit right. Love that. Love that. Yep. Earlier than ever in history, you've been disrupting the global startup and small to medium-sized market by eliminating the biggest business profit blind spot with your innovative plug-and-play solutions, offering the market what it never had access before. Thank you for bringing that to the market. Yeah. We all need it so much. You're personally innovated top business strategies and solutions so businesses get hiring right in any industry, and is known for building we cultures, not a me culture, a we culture. I love that too. High performing cultures and retain and profit driving employees with the least spent and time with the highest ROI, return on investment. And that's ultimately what it's all about. Yeah,
what absolutely. It's all about.
Fantastic.
Everyone
You're an intuit and a seer. And vision is the art of seeing things that other people can't see. Another great thing I love about you, and you see things far deeper and faster than most in the world, making you a priceless business partner. You deliver a differentiating partnership, giving your clients the upper hand and accelerating their growth and profitability. Alana Fulvio, again, welcome to the podcast. We're uber pumped and excited to have you today.
So excited to be here.
Just so everybody who's listening in or watching this gets to know you a little bit more, share with everybody who you are and whatever you want to share.
Yeah. So first, thank you for that introduction. Thank you so much for sharing my truth, for sharing who I am. Whenever I hear that, I get more excited. I get even more excited to become a part of what's happening in the world, of the evolvement of the world. So this all started when I was really, really young. I actually always was an entrepreneur. I would walk house to house, gathering cans and whatnot because I wanted to buy something. So I just took my little, bucket around and I would gather cans and go cash them in for money. And I thought, well, why not? I mean, if there's a need, those things are going to be thrown away. Why not create a solution for how to create it so that it doesn't hurt the earth and I make money? So at the raw age of about 4 or 5, I started already innovating solutions for the betterment of the whole, right?
Yeah.
And then I, grew up. I went to college. I went to Santa Barbara. I majored in sociology. I minored in Black studies. And Black studies, actually, people wondered why Black studies, because actually I was very, very, very confused with separatism. I never understood why a color or whatnot. So I just wanted to learn about that. I wanted to learn, and sociology was very much about how do groups of people function, and when they don't function well, I wanted to learn the inner workings of that. And then I launched myself out into the world and moved to Italy, because I moved everything to Italy without a job or without a home, actually, because I thought, well, I'm 24 and I have some money in my pocket and I'll just make it happen. So I got my citizenship, moved to Italy, had an incredible experience there, and ended up moving back in 2001 and skydiving and back into the Silicon Valley, where I took my whole career, went off, and I've had some other major happenings and ups and downs throughout period. But, what you read in the beginning is truly true. I have this really crazy, a lot of people have all these different areas of their life that they love. And I straddle this fence of, I'm in the corporate world, but I'm this human-centric, people first, like you are. People is first for you. And It's the same with me. And I've always been called crazy, actually, in the world of corporate, because right?
Yeah, you're not alone. Yeah.
And it's nuts because we can't do it without each other. And so more just ending about me, and we can move on to the questions, because you always have great questions. I always love your insights and your thought process. That's why we jive so well. Is really, I popped out on the other side of having worked intensely in, the war games of growing Silicon Valley. I was an in-house actual employee of LinkedIn. I grew their teams. I had to recruit against Google and et cetera. And I saw the breakdown. And so that's why I quit my job in 2014, bought my RV, rode around the US for a year, month and 2 days, by myself, all over the US. It was no plan. I woke up every morning and I said, where do I get to go now? Met the most amazing people. And then I came back and I said, I need to be my truth. I know what I know in what the world needs with business. And first and foremost, it's about people. So it's a little bit about me. So yeah, you could say I'm about people.
Just a little bit. And getting to know you more, and how you have a heart for people first, and helping people first, and more importantly, putting them in the right seat. Yep. And that's such a critical part of the whole equation. So let's talk about LinkedIn for just a minute. You're still based right now out of Northern California, out of the Silicon Valley, correct?
Yep. I can see it. I have a window and I can see all of Silicon Valley right here. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, before we jump into the story, how Pendulum became reality and an explosive global growth company now, let's talk a little bit about LinkedIn, because LinkedIn has become a significant platform, if you will, not only for, conversations about business, for business leaders, et cetera, but also for recruiting and so forth and so on. So think back to the times when you were at LinkedIn. What's your biggest takeaway from an identification standpoint, either positive or negative, about your time at LinkedIn?
You mean in identification with myself?
Well, no, about the business atmosphere concerning people. As it contributes to be a thought leader and a strategy leader on making sure that people have the right people within their organization.
Right. One of the biggest, and I will give kudos to LinkedIn. LinkedIn did two things while I was there, which were massive in the workplace. One, they did something in engineering that most companies won't do. That there's this thing called legacy code, and a lot of companies will build on top of this legacy code that they'll try to innovate on top of it. And actually, Kevin Scott, who I highly admire, he's now the CTO at Microsoft. He was the CTO at LinkedIn. He stopped production. so that we could take care of the legacy code, and then so we could build on top of a strong foundation. And that took more than guts. And so that one, and then they also did it within the recruiting department, right? HR and recruitment said, okay, they looked at Google as well. And Google has this machine about how they recruit, how they hire, how they intake their people, and Google from a very early stage created their culture, which is one of the factors that they win so big still, is because they created and defined their culture early. And therefore they knew who they wanted to hire and who was going to work, right? And how they could provide people with their lives. So LinkedIn took a moment, and actually we looked at the Google process, and we kind of didn't completely stop production, but we stopped recruiting production. And we looked out there and we went, how are we serving our staff? Because people think that recruitment is all about recruiters, and actually we're about this much when it comes to, I'm really good at what I do, but I'm about this much when it comes to the hiring process. It's everybody else, like yourself, like your team, the people that are interviewing, right? And I've never heard of anyone wanting to quit their job and do my job when they love their job more. Like an engineer, would you quit your job to do hiring? No way. Like, they want to be an engineer, but everyone is required to be a good hirer and a good team member. So they stopped production, and what it was is they looked at it and they said, how do we have an efficient process that can intake humans, humanize it, and understand how to create it efficiently so that it minimize times, minimize cost, and it also has the human factor where we understand if we can provide them with the lives that they want. That's how I say it now. But it was my biggest takeaway of, you don't put people through a grinder, and you don't say me, only me. It's only about me, where hiring comes from, about the company. It's not what can you do for me candidate. So the biggest thing for me was one, that they took the time to look at how to optimize these two big, huge parts of their business, and allowed themselves to say, hey, we're not getting it completely right. The humbleness of leadership, and looked at the best practices and invested in those best practices to ensure that they could accelerate quicker and better, which is why LinkedIn works so well. It could have gone downhill, totally.
Yeah. So what were some of those best practices? When we think about recruiting, because every business entrepreneur out there that has a team has to be involved in recruiting. And in the UPP world, we say you've always got to be recruiting, because you never know when that next need is going to happen. Yep. It could happen tomorrow. We had somebody on our own insurance agency team get involved in a car accident last year and is still out.
Oh, wow.
At the end of the day, we always have to be recruiting. So what are some of the things that people need to be doing? And then you mentioned culture. So we want to recruit for culture. Yep. And we want to make sure that we match the people that are out there that might be looking or may not be looking, right?
Oh, you always want those.
You always want the best of the best. Because we're not looking to hire the best available, right? We're looking to hire the best. Yep. Which is a difference. So what are some of the things that people need to be thinking about as they're creating their messaging going out in the world for recruiting purposes and so forth, to find the best and to get the best people in those seats?
Right. So you mentioned, what, like the messaging going out, I would actually turn it inward and say, what hiring system have you created inside of your company? Right. So some of those aspects, right? So, because usually we look outward and we think, oh, give me resumes, right? We want resumes. We need to be looking for the right people. Well, if you bring an A player, and I'll just say this, you find that A player and he's willing to talk to you, like, whew, like this great. Okay, we got to get ready. He's coming on in, or she's coming in, this A player. And let's say the A player comes in, and their experience of your internal hiring system, as I call it, the operating system, like the inner workings of a computer has an operating system, right?
Right.
Every piece must be in flow for it to work, or as we've seen, technology doesn't work. Right. So there's what I've invented called the hiring operating system. So this A player comes in, you have a disjunct hiring operating system where maybe they're not greeted at the door, Maybe they're left in the room. Maybe no one ever gets back to them, which happens all the time.
Wow.
Maybe, oh, that is rampant across companies. If if not interested, they won't reply to you, which
Okay.
is terrible for your brand. Don't be that company. And then really it's, so essentially what people need to get ready with, and some of those aspects are, number one, before you do anything, ensure that leadership is aligned in their own culture. And if they are truly invested in why they're hiring and how they're going to hire. Is it people first? Is it money first? How do they, because leadership can, I've worked with organizations where I've had one that said, I want money. I don't care about the person, which is crazy. Then I had the other one that said, no, this is people first. Well, it's a leadership that creates what happens underneath that. So you have to get the leadership on board. So leadership, if you're a leader of an organization, or you're, let's say, in an organization and you're a hiring manager, you're part of the hiring solution, get clear with your superiors, get clear with whoever is running the organization and say, why are we hiring? You know, what are we going to do about it? And what is our strategy? And usually strategy is pretty difficult because unless you're the expert in it, it's hard to know all of the intricate pieces.
Right.
But one aspect I would say is, what is our culture? Do not get resumes until you define your culture. Don't get resumes, don't interview, don't talk to that A player, don't do it. Because if you don't know, it's like dating. If you go out there and you're like, I don't know, this is just kind of who I am, and I don't know, I'm not quite sure, you're gonna get not quite sure people.
Right.
You know, and if you are considering hiring, and you know your culture is, you know, open door policy or whatever it might be, you know, you're innovative and you allow for growth and whatever it might be, but you have someone that comes in that you like their skills, but they're not aligned with your culture, it's going to be a breakdown. So something you can do and define your culture. Don't do it on your own. If you're not an expert at doing it, find someone to help you, because it's a thing, but it doesn't have to take long. I do it with my clients for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we get the baseline, right? The next aspect is select your team wisely. Amazing. So yeah, so as I was mentioning, the first aspect is leadership, is really the alignment. Then the second aspect is define your culture, is ensure that you do that. I do consult and coach on that, and I can have you in that, because you won't want to do anything, you want to hire or do recruiting or get resumes without having that, because your culture will be defined for you if you don't define it yourself. So I do that as well. The next step is then, who are your teams? Right? Who do you want to be your, as I call them, brand ambassadors, right? Your brand ambassadors are people who, when you interview, let's say this A player comes in, who do you want them to be interviewing with? Who, right? Because if you don't define your culture, these 3 people, 4 people are assuming, which is what humans do all the time. They assume they know what everyone else is thinking. And the other aspect,
let me ask you to pause for just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Who assumes?
All humans.
Got it.
Every
okay.
human.
So let's be clear on that. That's at a very critical point.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Assumption is the killer of most relationships, of a lot of business profitability and accomplishment as well, because starting at the top can assume that the other one gets what the other one gets, and clients spot in the world within business. It's a profit loss. There's an assumption from the top that culture is defined, and it's not defined by writing it on paper and assuming that everyone knows. It's actually sitting down face to face or on the computer and speaking it out to everybody, right? So that's what I facilitate that as well. I don't teach, I'm a facilitator. So I facilitate, this might sound funny, but there are it's like a spine. There are places that you're out and like breakdowns, right? I see your breakdowns, I do an assessment, I see your breakdowns, I see where you're strong. I come in and I facilitate you into your breakdowns, and I facilitate you to create your own breakthroughs, so that you don't have to have me forever. I can be your advisor, but that you have a solid hiring operating system within your organization that is founded by your own work. Because for me, if someone said, read this book and then go do it, I'm more of an experiencer. So that's what I do with my clients for sure. That's just my way.
Yeah. So another key point that I just heard you say, there is no breakthrough until we have a breakdown. So you got to
100%.
break it down before you can have that big breakthrough.
Yep.
So you help people define what the culture can be if they don't know what it is yet, or if they do think they have a culture or they've done some work on their culture, but it's not quite right?
Yeah.
That great synchronicity, because that's what we all want as far as operating teams are concerned, is that great synchronicity, and you help people with that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep, exactly.
So, thinking back to some of the best teams that you've ever been involved with, whether it be LinkedIn or you're competing against Google or all the people that you work with, what are some of the one or two key, points of the best cultures? I mean, characteristics. I mean, what do the cultures look like? The best of the best. And how's that created? Is it just all about the synchronicity of the people?
So one, leadership. I will go back to leadership is your number one. I've been in some of the worst cultures because the leadership was one of the worst cultures, because he didn't care about his company. He didn't care about, which is why we had 40% turnover year after year after year in a 300-400 person company.
Wow.
It never changed. Yeah. So some of the greatest cultures, I will say, is one, and I'm an advocate for this, and I also train and teach on this, and this should be within your hiring system. This should be in your strategy, is the greatest cultures the leadership looks and says, how can we support our people? Now, I always say people are our company's number one asset. It is, hands down. I don't care what great product you have. Ask anybody, ask Google, ask Facebook, ask whatever. If everyone walks out that day, it's not a great product, because it has to be all run by people. So the people are the most important aspect. So the greatest leadership that I've seen, like LinkedIn, when they stopped that and they said, our people are our greatest asset. And it was a few hundred and people until they actually sat down and clarified culture. So I'll say this. People say, oh, it's too early, I'm at 1 or 2 people. That's actually the best time. I don't care if you're 50,000 people. If you haven't done it, do it. And you'll see some people fall off. But the greatest cultures that I see are ones that are intentional. They are intentional about doing things. One, leadership is intentional about how they lead, what strategies they put in place, how they treat their people, vulnerability in regard to, wow, maybe we're not getting that so right. Maybe we need to bring in an expert or a thought leader or a partner or a coach to really get that right. Because one aspect that was not positive at one company was that a few of those leaders thought that they could do it all themselves. Right. And there's no possible way. You have to, that's why there's so many humans in the world. We can't all know everything. There's always too much to know. Right. So they really defined their culture. They got vulnerable. And the one thing that I will say is this. People can think that the leadership can think, oh, I've defined my culture, but then they have no communication strategy. That's also something that I teach and I align teams in, right? Because I can say here, and I'll throw a piece of paper at you, hey, Mike, go read that. And you're left to assume what all those words mean, right? It's actually getting people into a room. The greatest cultures say, we as leadership, and this is actually what is happening now in the greatest of companies. This is how we've created it, leadership. Employees, what do you think? Because the greatest leaders know they won't have anyone to lead if everyone walks out, if no one believes in them. Right. So therefore, to create the collective whole, to say, this is how we've defined it. We've defined it. What about you? Is having an open-minded and open conversation and a communication strategy that truly allows for inclusiveness. Because there's some people that might want to work in the corner and be quieter, and some people are more extroverted. That's fine. But I guarantee you, every human being wants to be supported in whatever is there, I call driver, whatever their personal motivation is. So I'd say they are very intentional. They're willing to invest in the areas that they're not experts in to create the correct strategies that, like we talked about earlier, blind spots, let them come up, bring them up. create the efficiencies, make your people number one, because they are your number one. In fact, that's it. They are your number one. And when you don't know something, it's okay.
Right.
Just be a good leader, a great leader, and lead with, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to go find that out for us. And I'm going to make us a strong organization.
Well, I heard you say vulnerability. We have to be vulnerable. We have to be real.
Yeah.
I mean, people want to connect with and lead under real people. Is that accurate?
Yeah, 100%.
So I've heard you say leadership more times than I can count so far in just the time that we've been chatting. But
Yeah.
If we think about leadership and we think about connecting with teams and we think about connecting teams with leadership, how often should that happen in the best of the best organizations? I mean, weekly, or what does that look like?
Well, I would say that, you know, and people talk about, oh, meetings, you know, you can have a meeting for another meeting, and
Right.
You don't need all those meetings. You don't have to connect that much. One, I think there is, again, there's the umbrella connection, the communication and connection strategy, right? Is what's going to work for our organization. Are we going to say, okay, we'll use something like Slack as an internal communication? What is that for? Like literally, I was at a company one time, and there were people like sitting right here, and I walked in with the CTO, and as I'm a seer, I got what was going on, and I said,
Right.
what's happening right here? And he said, they're fighting. There was no noise in the entire building. No one was talking. And I said, they're fighting? And they're right here. And he goes, yeah, they're fighting. I said, right now? He goes, yes. And he's a CTO. And I said, are you joking? They're Slack fighting right now. And you're okay with that? And he goes, I didn't think about it that way. I said, how detrimental to have two people texting each other on Slack, having an argument, versus coming face to face and having, and if you've created they had not created their culture. They had not created their culture, and they had not created a communication strategy. So I asked him, I said, I already knew the answer. I said, so how do you communicate primarily with your people? Slack. And I said, so you're an advocate. What you do is what they do. So you have a team that's fighting, communicating. Your communication strategy is silence and through text. So that's what I'm saying in terms of being intentional as a leader in regards to that teamwork. The leadership is what sets the tone. Being intentional about the communication strategy that you've authentically communicated it out to. How are we going to communicate when there's an issue? How are we going to communicate when, you know, a fire breaks out and we've got to go figure something out? This is what we're going to do. Like in skydiving,
Right.
It's the exact same thing, right? My best instructors always told me, you visualize what could happen up there. You visualize the breakdown, you visualize the malfunction that can happen, because the moment it happens, you can't keep screaming towards the ground and thinking, oh, I should have thought about that. Actually, it saved my life 3 times. I had 3 malfunctions. And in that moment, I oh yeah, 3. Yeah. Got rid of my main, and I under my reserve, and one was a total, and I couldn't feel anything out. And I looked down at the ground and went, thank God I chose on the ground. Boop, boop, boop. And I did it, and everything worked. And it's the same thing with leadership and creating teams and it can always change and shift, right? You don't always have to create it so structured. But creating the teams and teamwork that's going to work, you have to be vulnerable, authentic, create the communication strategy that they can work and live by, and understand that you don't want to leave things to assumption. You know, you just don't. It's like in hiring, people leave it assumption. Sorry if I'm laughing, but the world leaves it assumption that, like, it's the biggest blind spot, I think, because people assume that other people know how to hire other people. And actually, it's probably the hardest thing, because humans were made up so differently. So to create teams, there must be that communication strategy, and leadership must define it, be intentional about it, and create the culture within that. Like, how are we communicating? He created the culture of it's okay to fight and not talk it out. And that. Then there's the other ones that say, you know, when there's a disagreement, that's okay. Have the disagreement, but we're in this together, right? Our culture, because we've defined our culture, which then serves as the foundation for having disagreements. if you have a culture that is not bonded and aligned in, you know, radical openness and vulnerability or whatnot, then you're going to have breakdowns constantly. Right. So the greatest of teams have strategy, have leadership that's intentional. They've created, in my opinion, hiring systems that their leadership, I always say that leadership invests in their future employees by investing in their current. And I mean by that is that the current employees that they have right now, and not just, and also outside of recruiting, but none of the people that are actually recruiting and hiring for them are recruiters. Do you have an internal recruiter inside, like that works 100% just for you?
No.
Right. So 100% of your decision makers are non-recruiters. So that's the majority of companies, right?
Yes.
You have some expertise and people have the assumptions and whatnot.
Smaller companies under 50 employees, right?
Well, I can go higher than that.
But I mean, somebody who might have an internal recruiter.
I could do that as well. And this is the thing about having the internal recruiter is that one thing that I might partner with them. Well, I am an open partner in that way. It's more of, I would do hiring manager training while they would continue to recruit. And then I would partner with them to ensure that what their beliefs and systems are is what my beliefs and systems are, aligned with leadership, so that we're creating the most efficient and aligned partnership. But that's the biggest thing is the organizations that people think I'm crazy because I'll partner with a 1-person, 2-person show. People are like, oh, they don't have enough money. That's crazy. And I said, I'm not in this for hiring. I'm in this for everyone to get their lives.
Right.
That's why I do what I do. And because I watched companies in Silicon Valley not caring about, I have this thing that I say, human resources. The reason I quit in 2014, because the game of human resources, we were not being humans or human-centric to each other, and we sure as heck weren't being resources. And I said, I can't work in this industry anymore. I can't do it. We must be, and even if you're not a recruiter, you're still HR because you're being a human-centric resource for the people that already work for you and the people that are coming in. So investing in training and developing your current people, creating the hiring operating system, so they don't hate hiring because they don't really want to do it outside their job, or make it fun. If you make it repeatable, they'll want to be a part of it. And then the A player comes in, they're like, whoa. Because I tell you, 90% of small businesses and startups fail every year. And the biggest blind spot is the dysfunction of people, because they have wrong matches, and then they might have different leadership and whatnot. It's a profit bleed that they don't know where it comes from, but it's the biggest profit bleed. So yeah, it's a big one, which is why I stepped away and I created Pendulum. Yeah, I just said I've seen it done.
Yeah, I mean, I hope everybody who's watching and or listening to this is taking copious notes. And if not, the good news with technology, you can stop, go back, watch it and listen again and take more notes, because I mean, the gold nuggets, I'm just, on the edge of my chair listening to Alana. Thank you so much as we begin to wrap this up today. And we'll talk about a freebie in just a second. Yeah. But leadership, it starts with leadership, but we have to be authentic. And bigger than that, one of my big ahas in listening to you, I'm going to go back and revisit my own communication skills, because it's so vitally important. We might think we know how to communicate, but it's not about us, right? Mm-hmm. It's all about them. And we can't assume anything. So how do we find out how they like to communicate? Well, maybe just ask.
Yep. 100% yes, ask. And actually, the best part is get them all in a room and ask them all together, because then they get to learn about each other.
Yeah, and have those team buildings, and we call them team health days.
Beautiful.
Where, we just go hang out, or we, rent a closed down bowling alley lane or area, or, go hang out at an event or something like that when we can. And everything like that. But the other big takeaway that I just heard you say was not just HR, it's human-centric relationships. Is that what you said? Or resources?
Resources, being a resource.
Or human-centric relationships as well.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we're in the relationship business with our teammates.
Oh, 100%. Well, yeah, they are your family. A lot of times they spend more time than they do at home. And God, imagine doing that with people that you don't like, or they're not the same culture fit,
Right.
or, or they they hate hiring and they secretly resent you as a leader.
Well, yeah.
Trust me, I've seen that.
Yeah. And the greatest leadership thought that I've ever heard so far in my evolution was, would I follow me?
Oh yeah.
And, we've got to make sure as leaders that we're continuing to get better every single day, because the day we stop learning is the day we stop growing. And the day we stop growing as a leader is the day that maybe our organization doesn't make the progress that it can. So,
yeah.
So thankful for people like you, Alana Fulvio, who's out there working with teams, making sure their culture is just right and top notch, and that the leaders have the right mindset, because our mindset's our skill set, right?
Oh, 100%. And then the mindset around you, that's how you create the, like yours is going from, like we were talking about one day, going from here to here, right? You can be going like this, but if the rest of your team's down here, you're not going anywhere. So It is about the collective.
So tell us a little bit about a freebie as we wrap this up today.
Yeah.
If you're watching this, the link or portal that it came from has Alana's freebie connected to it. So what do we have for everybody out there who invested time to be with us today?
As we were talking, I added one more in there because I just love giving. I swear, I just love it. So I'm going to offer 4 things, 3 of the same and 1 different. So
wow.
I'm going to offer 3 companies. It doesn't matter, 2 people, 5 people, 50 people, 100 people, 2 hours. So 3 2 hours of my time. So 3 different, we'll get that. And what we will do is we will focus on that culture. We'll focus on the assessment of your hiring operating system inside, and looking at future and what you want, all within that. And also looking at leadership and anything else that you want to speak about. But we're going to focus on that part. The other one that I thought about during this, and I just thought, how fun would it be for someone to really experience? You can have this incredible workshop that turns organizations around with their hiring operating system and leadership and teams and culture and communication strategy. I'm unwilling to give a half of that away. So you have 1 full day with me, with you plus your hiring and I say your hiring teams, the hiring managers that you've selected. So anybody that touches your hiring process, I will do a 6-hour with you on my whiteboard. We can do it virtual. We get everyone into one room, and I will run through what my secret sauce is in terms of how to turn you guys around like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. That is amazing.
You're welcome.
The first 3 agencies to respond get the 1 to 2 hour consultation with you. And then the first one to raise their hand who wants to bring their entire team in for a 6-hour, 1-day ninja stealth strategy session with the one, the only global leader, Alana Fulvio. Wow, that is an amazing, very kind offer. Thank you so much. I mean, living is giving, and you just did it to the nth degree. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
so,
it's my honor to give. It's my honor. Sometimes, I wonder why I was the lucky one to receive the information and the knowledge and the strategies that I have. But it's my honor to be able to give it out and watch lives transform. So yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And it's through you too. You're amazing in what you do, and your service first and people first. And I honor you as well. Thank you so much.
Well, no, thank you. The honor's all mine, and the gratitude from my heart right now is just overflowing with your generosity of time, leadership thoughts, global leadership thoughts, and strategies that you've learned in the trenches so far. And the sky's the absolute limit for all of us. So, Alana Fulvio, thank you so much. You are absolutely unstoppable without question. Thank you so very much for being part of the Unstoppable Profit Podcast. This is Mike Stromsoe coming to you live from the Living Agency Laboratory. Thank you, Alana. Go out there and continue being unstoppable. Please continue making a difference for companies everywhere out there. This is Mike Stromsoe. I will talk to you next time on the next episode. Alana, have a great day.
Bye. You too. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to listen to more episodes or share this podcast with someone you care about, please visit www.unstoppableprofitpodcast.com. Now go out and make a difference. Be unstoppable and leave no regrets.